Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of Ford vs. Ferrari. This movie is directed by James Mangold, who previously did Walk the Line, Logan, 3:10 to Yuma. This movie stars Matt Damon and Christian Bale. In 1966, two competing car companies were Ford and Ferrari. And it's not just the competitions were between the companies, but it was more or less between the heads of the companies. They were rivals. So the Ford Motor Company approaches Carroll Shelby, played by Matt Damon, and they ask him to design a car using Ford parts and products that can outrace and beat a Ferrari. So Carroll Shelby approaches his fearless frenemy, Ken Miles, played by Christian Bale, and they design a car that changes not only the world of racing, but also the world of automobiles forever. When I first saw the trailer for Ford vs. Ferrari, I got excited. Only for the simple fact that I loved the movie Rush with Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl. And I liked the way they brought racing to be almost part of the character. It helped define the character. Yeah, you have movies like Driven and Days of Thunder, but Rush presented racing in a different kind of light. It made it not only a sport or something the character was doing, but it was something the character loved to do, and it made them who they were. So I wanted to see this movie based on that. And then when I heard James Mangold was directing it, I'm on board. And then Christian Bale and Matt Damon, I found out were in the movie. And I'm like, yeah, I can't be any more excited for this film. And having seen it, let me just say, it feels really good to walk out of a movie when it not only meets your excitement, your anticipation level, and your expectations, but when it exceeds it, it's that much better of a feeling. And let me just say, Ford vs. Ferrari did just that. Let me start off by saying, you don't have to go into this movie super knowledgeable about cars or vehicles or racing or what certain terminology and things mean. You don't have to understand how a car works to see a movie like this. Because it doesn't talk down to you, doesn't treat you like you're 5 years old, but it gives you enough information to where you hear a person have a conversation about a car, about what something does, and you understand it. You don't have to know how an engine works to appreciate a movie like this, because the story is more than that. It's not just about what makes a car go. It's about the people that make the car go. And that's why the movie is so enjoyable. It's not about the thing they do, it's about the people and why they enjoy doing it. Now, the acting. When I heard Matt Damon was going to be in this, I was like, okay, I'll see it. To be honest, I hadn't really cared too much for Matt Damon since he did The Departed. Yes, he's been in a whole bunch of diverse stuff, but it wasn't until this movie that I remembered, hey, Matt Damon can act. And he really does in this movie, because a lot of his films, he just plays, your everyday guy, just your regular man, put in a certain situation having to deal with that. But here, he's a character. Yeah, he plays Carroll Shelby, this guy that wears a cowboy hat and has a southern accent, but this is the kind of movie where it made his presence felt. Speaking of that, Christian Bale. Wow. I've got to stop thinking to myself every time I see Christian Bale in a movie, I keep wanting to say, I wonder if Christian Bale's going to kind of phone in this performance. I wonder if it's just going to be just another Christian Bale movie. But that's never the case with this guy. He dedicates so much to the role. And I hadn't heard him speak in any of the trailers, so I didn't know that Christian Bale was going to act and play the character this type of way. I didn't know he had an accent. At first, he kept making me think that he sounds a lot like Ben Mendelsohn, but after a while, he fades into this character. You don't see Christian Bale, the actor. You see Ken Miles, the character. the husband, the father, the racing enthusiast. That's why I'm going to call it now. I can see Matt Damon and Christian Bale both being nominated for Best Actor or Best Supporting Actor come Academy Awards. They fell into these roles so flawlessly, and their chemistry is great. Their friendship, there's scenes where they laugh, they get along, but there's scenes where they're not laughing. And they worked so well together in this movie. Fun fact, these two men were actually going to be in The Fighter together. That would have been an interesting experience. And now we finally get them together in this movie. And I'll tell you, they deliver. And it's not just the two leads that do a phenomenal job in this movie. The kid that plays Ken Miles' son was really good. The woman that plays Ken Miles' wife was really good. Heck, even the head of the Ford Motor Company, played by Tracy Letts. All of these actors bring things to these roles that make them stand out. Yes, this movie has a lot of characters, but they show them frequently enough, and they're so distinguished, and their personalities and the mannerisms and who they are as individuals stand out so uniquely that when they show, the snake-like Josh Lucas in this movie, you know right away the type of character he is. Jon Bernthal's in this movie. This is probably the most tame Jon Bernthal role I've ever seen. He plays a nice guy. He doesn't play the, okay, tough Jon Bernthal like he's used to playing. He's tame, and he's relaxed, and he's actually quite charming. Ray McKinnon is also in this. He plays a character named Pops, who's like the leader of the pit team for Carroll Shelby. He's like this older guy that works with him. Really good performance. There isn't a performance in this movie that I felt, they could use more of that character or a little less of that person or that personality, because they all move the story along. This movie, like the film Rush, which I'm sorry I'm going to be comparing it to Rush and 3:10 to Yuma, because they're two of my favorite films. This movie took both of those aspects that made them successful and put them together. James Mangold took the father-son dynamic, but also the dynamic of two men, and made their personalities, intertwine and move the story along. You had this aspect of racing and what it means to people, and what getting behind the wheel of that vehicle does to people, how it changes them, what their outlook is when they're no longer going, 0 miles an hour, but now 200 miles an hour. There's like a philosophy when it comes to racers and the passion they have. And so not only is this comparable to Rush, 3:10 to Yuma, but also The Right Stuff. A movie that, like this and Rush, told true stories. But they weren't super dramatic. They weren't super intense. There was actually, an uplifting element to them. There was comedy. The movie was serious when it had to be, light and fluffy to kind of get you behind certain characters and to, move the story along, but overall told a really good story. And that's really all you can ask for. This movie is well directed. It's not too confusing with the aspect of racing, which I kind of thought it would turn some audiences off. It doesn't. The actors are believable, charming. You get behind them. And this tells a true story. So some things you may not know, that by the end, when it ends in that text and you read what it says, you're like, wow, you know what? I didn't know about this rivalry or these cars or these men, but now I'm glad I do. So not only was this movie everything I wanted to be and more, but it was also just an overall enjoyable movie. And so because of that, I'm going to give Ford vs. Ferrari an A. Real quick, I wanted to bring something to your guys' attention. And this is a movie that goes overlooked, that a lot of people just don't know about. It's from 2012, and the movie is called The Flowers of War with Christian Bale. This is the only film he did in that year. It's directed by Zhang Yimou, who also directed Hero with Jet Li. And this movie until The Great Wall came out with Matt Damon a couple years ago, Flowers of War was the most expensive film ever made in China. And you can definitely tell that the production goes into this movie is on a grand scale, because it doesn't just, have a set of a house or a building, but an entire street, a block, almost like a small town. So much went into the making of this movie. And the reason it's powerful and I'm recommending it is because Christian Bale is the lead. And the movie is filmed in China, and he's the only actor that has like an American accent or speaks English. He plays the thief in World War II. It's in Nanking, so there's bombings and war going on in this riddled town. And he comes across this group of women and this group of school children. And if you like movies about redemption, then you'll love this movie, because he goes from this man who's very careless and just cares about making a buck and benefiting himself to going, transforming. And in a lot of movies, there's scenes where a character gets emotional or upset or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, it's not that believable. This movie has Christian Bale expressing joy in some scenes and just tragedy and sadness in others, and you can really feel his pain. He doesn't get emotional a lot of his movies, and this one, he does, and it's very, very moving. So I highly recommend it. It's called The Flowers of War. If you like Christian Bale or historical movies, then you'll appreciate this film. So until next time, guys, see ya.